The return of Serin. Far beyond the shores of Maruva, the ocean stretched into endless mystery. Serin swam through silent waters, her heart heavy with the weight of betrayal. Welcome to African Tales by Khal_, where African stories come to life. Subscribe and join our storytelling family. She passed coral forests glowing like lanterns and valleys filled with deep blue silence. Yet nothing brought her peace. She whispered to the sea, "Where does a broken heart go to heal?" A soft voice rose behind her. "You are far from your tides, Serin." She turned sharply and saw an older mare woman with shimmering pearl-colored scales and long black hair that flowed like ink through the water. Serin blinked in surprise. "Who are you?" The stranger smiled sadly. "My name is Aurelia, keeper of lost tides. I watch over those who suffer." Serin lowered her gaze. "Then you know why I swim alone." Aurelia touched Serin's shoulder gently. "The wounds of trust cut deepest. But running from pain does not heal it." Serin's voice trembled. "I love them, and they destroyed me." Aurelia nodded. "Then learn from the wound, not to close your heart, but to protect it wisely." Serin stared into the distant darkness. "How?" Aurelia smiled softly. "You will learn. But first, you must see what the future demands of you. There is a danger rising, a storm greater than any you have known." Serin's heart pounded. "What storm?" Aurelia's voice darkened. "Not one born of clouds, but of creatures who despise both land and sea." Aurelia led Serin through a long underwater tunnel shaped from white stone. Sapphire lanterns flickered along the walls, glowing like underwater stars. The tunnel opened into a vast chamber where ancient murals covered the columns. Pictures of oceans burning, cities sinking, and strange shadow creatures with glowing eyes. Serin stared in confusion. "What is this place?" Aurelia answered solemnly, "The Hall of Currents. Here the sea writes its history and its warnings." Serin stepped closer to one mural showing dark figures rising from a crack in the ocean floor. Their shapes were twisted and monstrous, with limbs like smoke and mouths full of fire. "What are they?" Serin whispered. Aurelia's voice trembled. "The Mornak, ancient beings imprisoned beneath the sea for thousands of years. They feed on fear and chaos. When the hearts of land and sea turn against each other, their chains weaken." Serin froze. The betrayal, the storm, the hatred in the hearts of the villagers. Aurelia nodded. "Yes, the balance is broken. The Mornak are waking." Serin pressed a hand to her chest, dread filling her. "What must I do?" Aurelia turned to her. "You are the bridge between two worlds. Only you can unite them, or the Mornak will destroy both." Serin shook her head in disbelief. "But they rejected me." Aurelia's eyes softened. "Then you must find the strength to choose forgiveness, before the sea chooses vengeance." Back in Maruva, storms continued to shake the land. Houses creaked, boats splintered, and the wind howled like a wounded beast. The villagers gathered in the meeting hall, fear etched into every face. Elda stood before them, voice shaking. "The sea has not calmed completely. We are spared destruction, but the ocean still refuses its blessings." A man shouted angrily, "We must find Serin and beg her to return." Another cried, "What if she is gone forever?" Taro, now strong again, pounded his cane on the floor. "Silence! None of you thought of her heart when you threw nets over her like an animal." The crowd lowered their heads, ashamed. Lena stepped forward. "Serin said she would return when love is stronger than fear. So we must prove it." A woman wiped tears from her face. "But how?" "Words are not enough." Lena's voice grew determined. "Then we show her. We rebuild, not for survival, but for her." Taro nodded firmly. "We start today. We build lantern towers along the shore, so she will see our light no matter how far she swims." The villagers murmured with new resolve. Elder sighed heavily, guilt shaking his voice. "We nearly destroyed the only miracle we ever had. This time, we will be worthy of her." Outside, the sea listened quietly. Deep below the ocean, Aurelia guided Serin to a glowing pool surrounded by rings of pearls. "This is the tide mirror," she explained. "It shows not the past, but what the heart needs to see." Serin looked uncertain. "I am afraid of what it will reveal." Aurelia nodded. "Truth is always frightening." Serin stepped forward and peered into the water. At first she saw only her own reflection, tired, wounded, yet strong. Then the image rippled and changed. She gasped as she saw Maruva rebuilding its homes and lantern towers rising along the beach. Children painted shells with her name. Men carved wooden statues of a mermaid with wings of water. Lena stood proudly upon a rock shouting, "Hope begins today." Tears filled Serin's eyes. "They are trying." The image shifted again, showing Elda falling to his knees in the sand, crying, his hands shaking. "Forgive us," he whispered. "I am sorry, Serin." Serin pressed a hand over her mouth, trembling. "Why do they show me this now?" Aurelia answered slowly. "Because your pain blinded you to the seeds of change. Healing grows slowly, but it begins." The image faded. Serin looked up with new conflict in her eyes. Suddenly, the ground shook with a deep roar that rattled the stones beneath them. The lights flickered violently. Aurelia stiffened, her voice sharp. "The Mornak, they are breaking free." Serin's heart raced. "What must I do?" Aurelia pointed toward the open ocean. "You must return to the surface. The sea is calling you." Serin hesitated. "But I am afraid. What if they betray me again?" Aurelia gripped her shoulders. "Courage is not the absence of fear. It is choosing to act despite it. You must fight not against them, but for them." Serin swallowed hard, her voice barely a whisper. "I do not know if I am strong enough." Aurelia smiled softly. "You were strong enough to save them once. You will be strong enough to save them again." Serin took a deep breath and nodded. "Then I will go." Aurelia raised her arms, summoning a powerful current that surrounded Serin like a spiral of silver wind. "Go, child of song. The world waits for you." Serin shot upward through the water, faster than she had ever swum before. Meanwhile, in Maruva, the sky darkened as thunder split the sky in half. The ocean churned violently, rising in enormous pillars of water. Villagers screamed and ran, clinging to anything fixed to the ground. Lena stared at the sea in horror. "This is not a normal storm," Tara whispered. Elda looked toward the horizon and gasped as massive black shapes rose from the waves. Tall, smoke-bodied creatures with glowing red eyes and mouths filled with fire. "The Mornak," he breathed. The leader of the monsters roared, its voice shaking the ground. "Land dwellers, your fear feeds us. Your hatred has freed us. Now we will drown your world." The villagers collapsed in terror. Lena shouted desperately, "Serin, please, we need you." But the storm only grew stronger. Buildings shattered. Waves swallowed the docks whole. Elder fell to his knees weeping. "This destruction is the price of our betrayal." The Mornak advanced, towering higher than the lighthouse ruins. Their laughter echoed like thunder. Just when all hope seemed lost, a blinding column of blue-white light erupted from the sea. The storm froze, as if the sky itself held its breath. The villagers stared in shock as Serin rose from the ocean, surrounded by a swirling aura of silver water and glowing sea light. Her eyes blazed with fierce determination. Lena cried out with joy, "Serin!" Seran's voice boomed across the shore, strong and filled with power. "I have returned not to punish, but to protect." The Mornak snarled, "You cannot stop us, child of the tide. Fear has unlocked our chains." Serin spread her arms, summoning waves of shimmering energy. "Then I will unlock something stronger." Lightning burst from the water, forming a shield around the village. The Mornak screamed in rage, slamming their massive fists against the barrier. Elder rose, tears streaming. "Serin, forgive us. We will stand with you." The villagers stepped forward, forming a circle around her. Lena shouted, "We choose love." The shield grew brighter. The sea roared with renewed strength. The Mornak leader roared violently. "You think love can defeat us?" Serin raised her voice. "Love built the sea itself, and now it will break you." She lifted her arms and sang, a powerful, ancient song unlike any she had sung before. The water responded like a living army, rising into massive spirals of light. The Mornak shrieked as beams of silver energy struck them, burning through their smoky forms. "No, we cannot return to the abyss," they screamed. Serin's voice rose higher, filled with fire and grace. The ground split open, and a swirling vortex of glowing water pulled the Mornak downward. One by one they disappeared, screaming as their chains bound them once again. The last creature glared at Serin with burning hatred. "This is not over, child of song." Serin sang one final note, and the vortex sealed shut like a door of stone. Silence fell. Exhausted, Serin collapsed to her knees on the sand. The glow around her faded slowly, flickering like a candle in a storm. Lena rushed to her and wrapped her arms around her tightly. "You saved us again." Serin smiled weakly. "No, we saved each other." Elder approached her slowly, falling to his knees and touching his forehead to the sand. "Serin, I do not deserve your forgiveness, but thank you for giving it anyway." She reached out and lifted his chin gently. "Guilt cannot rebuild a heart. Only truth and change can do that." Elder nodded, tears streaming. "We will never forget." Taro stepped forward, smiling proudly. "The sea chose well when it chose you." Serin looked around at the villagers, no longer enemies, but family reborn. For the first time, her heart felt light. The storm clouds finally cleared, revealing a sky filled with stars brighter than any night before. The sea glowed softly, peaceful and warm. Children ran to the water's edge cheering. "Serin is back. The sea is happy again." Lanterns were lit and placed gently onto the waves. Their soft golden light drifted outward like floating hope. Serin stood at the shoreline, looking at Lena beside her. "Thank you," Serin whispered. "You believed in me when no one else did." Lena smiled. "You taught me what love can do." Serin looked toward the open horizon, the future stretching ahead like a shining path. The ocean is wide, and its story is far from finished. She lifted her hand toward the sea. "A new tide begins today." The villagers cheered together, their voices rising like a song that reached the stars. In the days following the great battle, peace washed over Maruva like a gentle tide. The ocean and the village breathed together again, no longer separated by fear and silence. Fishermen returned to the water, and their nets overflowed with shining silver fish. Children played along the shoreline, singing songs they created about Serin, songs filled with joy and bravery. Serin spent her mornings resting in the shallow cove, where sunlight turned the surface of the water into gold. But even in peace, her heart held a quiet question. What comes next? One afternoon, Lena approached her with a basket of fruit and shells painted with mermaids and waves. You look thoughtful, Lena said gently. Serin smiled faintly. The sea speaks of change. I feel something approaching, something I do not yet understand. Lena sat beside her. You don't have to face anything alone anymore. Serin's eyes softened. That is still new for me. They sat in silence, listening to the waves. Suddenly, Serin's expression sharpened. She pressed a hand to her chest. Do you feel that? Lena frowned. Feel what? A sudden ripple surged through the water, sending a shiver across the surface like a warning bell. Serin whispered, the ocean trembles. Another tide is turning. Lena's breath caught. Another danger? Serin looked toward the open sea, her face tense. Not danger. Something searching for me. And far beyond the horizon, a dark shape approached, cutting through the waves like a silent arrow. That night, a strange mist rolled in from the northern sea, thick enough to blur the moon and swallow the cliffs. Villagers gathered nervously along the sand, clutching lanterns that flickered weakly in the fog. Taro leaned heavily on his cane. I have lived 60 years and never seen fog like this, he muttered. Lena stood beside Serin at the shore's edge. Is this what you felt earlier? Serin nodded slowly. Yes. Something moves within it. Elder stepped forward cautiously. Will it bring harm? Serin's eyes narrowed. I do not know yet. Suddenly, a horn sounded, deep and echoing, vibrating through the earth. The villagers gasped and looked toward the water. Through the mist emerged a massive dark ship with silver sails shaped like wings. A crest gleamed at the bow, a sword wrapped in swirling waves. The ship cut silently through the water until it stopped before the village. A plank dropped heavily to the sand. Soldiers in sea blue armor stepped onto the beach, forming a line. Their faces were stern but not hostile. Then a tall figure descended the plank, a long cloak flowing behind him like a wave. His skin was bronze, his eyes storm gray, and glowing markings shaped like water currents traced his arms. He carried a trident forged from pearl and silver. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Lena whispered, Who is he? Serin's heart tightened strangely, both cautious and curious. The man planted the trident into the sand and spoke in a strong, resonant voice. I am Prince Khal of the Kingdom of Nereth. I have come for Serin, daughter of the sea. The village fell silent. Serin stepped forward, her voice steady despite the surprise in her eyes. Why do you seek me, Khal of Nereth? Khal bowed his head respectfully. Your song reached even the deepest trenches. We felt the sea tremble when you defeated the Mornak. The ocean carried your name to our kingdom. Serin frowned. The battle is finished. Why come now? Khal met her gaze with fierce clarity. Because the Mornak's return was only the beginning. Their awakening signal has spread through the ocean. The balance of the sea is breaking. Gasps swept through the villagers. Elder stepped forward nervously. Do you mean there are more monsters like them? Khal nodded grimly. Something far worse stirs beneath the northern ice. The sea kingdoms have felt the tremors. We need help to stand against what comes. Serin's tail rippled anxiously. Why me? Khal answered without hesitation. Because you alone hold the Song of Tides, the only power ancient enough to unlock or seal the ocean gates. Serin stepped back, stunned. I do not understand. I am only a mermaid. Khal shook his head. You are more. Your power is older than you know. It is why the sea chose you. Lena stared at Serin with wonder. Serin, this might be your destiny. Serin hesitated, fear crawling through her chest. I do not know if I can do this again. Kales lowered his voice. Then let me help you. The wind whispered through the silent crowd. The villagers gathered around a large bonfire as night deepened, waiting anxiously as Kales and Serin spoke apart from the others. The fire crackled, casting shifting light across their faces. Kales looked at Serin with concern. You carry the weight of a great burden alone. Serin looked away toward the dark sea. I gave everything once, and they turned against me. My heart still aches. Kales nodded gently. Pain does not vanish easily. But you rose again. That is strength. Serin's voice shook. Strength feels heavy. Kales smiled faintly. Then let others share the weight. Even the sea rests between tides. Serin studied him, unsure. I do not know if I can trust so easily. Kales's voice softened. Trust does not require blindness. It requires choosing courage again. Lena approached carefully. Serin, we will support you. We will not make the same mistake twice. Elder stepped forward too, his voice humble. We will stand with you, even if the ocean turns to fire. Serin looked at her hands, remembering the rope burns that once cut into her skin. She looked at Lena's hopeful face, then at the villagers, no longer afraid but united. She finally whispered, I will help, but I will not lead alone. Kales bowed his head. I would not ask you to. The villagers erupted into relieved cries. But far beyond the firelight, something enormous stirred beneath the waves, watching silently. The next morning, Kales led Serin and the villagers to the ship anchored in the cove. Its silver sails shimmered like moonlit silk, and sea eagles circled above it, screeching wild calls. Soldiers bowed as Serin approached, their faces filled with awe. One whispered, the song-bearer. Serin glanced nervously at Lena. I am not used to this, Lena laughed softly. You saved the world twice. You'll have to get used to it. Serin blushed faintly, then swam alongside the ship. Kales stood on the deck, offering his hand. Come aboard, Serin. She hesitated. Her tail moved uncertainly beneath her. Kales's expression gentled. You will not fall. I promise. Slowly, she placed her hand in his. A warm, strange energy moved through her chest when their fingers touched, surprising her. He guided her onto a special platform of water held firm by magic. Serin's eyes widened. What is this? Tide magic, Kales explained. A gift to those who fight for the sea. Villagers watched in wonder. Elder called out, May the sea guide you. Taro raised his cane. Return to us alive. Lena clasped Serin's hands tightly one last time. Do not forget who you are. Serin whispered back, I will return. The ship's horn sounded, deep as thunder. The sails caught wind like wings, and the ship began its journey north, toward the frozen waters where danger waited. As the ship cut through the waves, Kales invited Serin to the high deck, where the stars shone like diamonds scattered across black velvet. The ocean glowed faintly beneath them, lit by swirling trails of plankton. Serin leaned against the rail, staring into the endless horizon. I feel the sea speaking something old. Kales nodded. The ocean holds memories older than kingdoms. It remembers everything. Serin turned to him. Do you know the prophecy of the song-bearer? Kales's expression shifted. Asterisk, only fragments. It says, when the heart of the sea breaks, the voice of the tide will rise. One song shall mend or shatter the world. Serin shivered. And you believe that is me? The sea believes it, Kales said quietly. And I trust the sea. Serin looked down at her hands. I do not feel powerful. I feel afraid. Kales stepped closer, his voice gentle. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is choosing to act while fear screams inside you. Serin met his eyes, surprised by the warmth she felt there. You speak like someone who has lost much. Kaylee's looked toward the night sky, pain shadowing his expression. I lost my family to the darkness rising in the north. I will not lose my kingdom too. Serin touched his arm gently. Then we fight together. Their hands brushed. The stars flickered wildly overhead, as if hearing a promise bigger than both of them. Days passed as the ship traveled deeper north, the water darkening and the air turning sharp with frost. Strange shapes moved beneath the surface, long shadows that flickered like restless ghosts. One night, alarms sounded across the deck. Soldiers shouted, gripping their weapons. Kaylee's rushed to Serin. They're here. The water erupted violently, sending huge waves crashing over the ship. Dark serpents with glowing red eyes burst from the sea, their bodies twisting like black smoke. Their shrieks tore through the air. Serin's heart pounded. Are these the Mornak? Kaylee shook his head. No, scourlings, servants of the darkness. They lunged at the soldiers, ripping through the railings. Serin raised her arms, calling to the water. Shield us! A spiraling wall of water rose around the deck, blocking the creatures. But the serpents struck relentlessly, cracking the barrier. Kaylee shouted, We must combine powers, sing Serin. Serin closed her eyes and let her voice rise. Low at first, then soaring like wind through mountains. The water shimmered and hardened into crystal light. The scourlings screamed as beams of silver energy tore through them, dissolving their bodies into mist. Silence returned as the last serpent fell. Serin staggered, breath shaking. Kaylee's caught her. You did it. Serin whispered, No, we did. But below them, far beneath the freezing waves, something massive shifted. Far larger than anything they had yet faced. After the attack, the crew repaired the damaged deck, working through the cold night. Serin sat beside Kaylee's in the captain's chamber, wrapped in a shimmering blanket woven of sea silk. Her body trembled with exhaustion. Kaylee's watched her carefully. Your power grows stronger each time you use it. Serin sighed. Sometimes I am afraid of what I can do. Kaylee's nodded. Power without heart is destruction. Power with heart becomes salvation. You have the second. Serin smiled weakly. How can you speak with such certainty? Kaylee's looked down, fingers tracing the carved edge of his trident. My mother used to say it. She ruled Nereth with wisdom and kindness. When she died, the kingdom lost its light. I swore to protect that light wherever it might rise again. Serin watched him quietly, her heart softening. You carry a great loneliness. Kaylee's voice lowered. So do you. Their eyes met, two wounded souls seeing themselves reflected in the other. For a moment the world fell away, the storm, the prophecy, the darkness waiting. Serin whispered, I am glad you found me. Kaylee's answered softly, I think the sea chose us to find each other. A sudden horn blast shattered the quiet. A soldier burst in, breathless. Your Highness, ice wall ahead. We are entering the frozen expanse. Kaylee stood immediately. The final gate. Serin followed, fear and determination rising together. The ship broke through the mist to reveal an enormous frozen landscape where the sea and sky blended into endless white. Towering cliffs of ice rose like crystal cathedrals, glowing faintly blue. Snow fell in thick spirals, and the air burned with bitter cold. Soldiers shivered beneath heavy cloaks. Serin stared, mesmerized. It is beautiful and terrifying. Kaylee's nodded. The gate of winter lies beyond those cliffs. It seals the prison where the ancient darkness sleeps. A deep rumbling echoed beneath the ice, shaking the ship. Cracks spider-webbed across the frozen walls. Serin gripped the rail. The prison is breaking. The ice exploded outward, sending shards raining into the sea. From the darkness below, a monstrous shape began to rise, its form too vast to fully see, horned, winged, and casting a shadow that swallowed light. Soldiers dropped their weapons in terror. Khal shouted, "Hold your ground!" Serin whispered, "This is the real enemy." The creature opened burning red eyes and roared, shaking the world itself. "I am Morgrath, king of the abyss. The sea and land will bow to me." Serin felt the ocean tremble with fear. Khal gripped his trident. "Serin, this is your moment." Serin stared at the monster, her heart pounding like thunder. Morgrath's voice tore through the air like a hurricane. "Child of water, your song freed my children. You opened the first gate. Now I shall open the rest." Serin shook her head fiercely. "No, I sealed them again." Morgrath laughed, a sound that shattered ice and rattled bones. "You delayed what cannot be stopped. The sea is breaking. Fear is rising. The world will drown in darkness." The ship lurched violently as waves exploded outward. Soldiers fell across the deck. Khal struggled to stay upright. "Serin, only your voice can stop him." Serin closed her eyes tightly, her body shaking with terror. "My voice is not enough. I am not enough." Khal grabbed her shoulders, his voice fierce. "You are the song of tides. You saved a village. You defeated monsters. You survived betrayal. Your voice is stronger than you know." Serin opened her eyes, filled with pain, uncertainty, and something new, resolve. "I will try." She stepped forward to the edge of the ship. Snow swirled around her, and the ocean rose like a trembling choir waiting for its conductor. Serin lifted her hands. "For the sea, for those I love, I will sing." She drew a breath, but Morgrath surged forward to strike before she could release the note. The scene froze on the edge of destruction. Morgrath lunged forward with a roar that ripped through the sky, his claws slicing through waves like knives. The ship pitched violently, nearly capsizing. Soldiers screamed as icy water flooded the deck. Khal leaped in front of Serin, raising his trident. "Stay behind me," he shouted, striking at Morgrath's limb with a burst of silver energy. The attack barely slowed the beast, it only enraged him further. Morgrath's voice rumbled like thunder. "Your struggle is useless. The sea belongs to darkness now." Serin's breath caught in her throat. She tried to summon her voice, but fear strangled the melody before it could rise. The monster's power pressed against her like crushing stone. Khal turned to her urgently. "Serin, sing. The sea waits for you." She shook her head, eyes wide. "I cannot." Morgrath slammed a massive wing down, shattering the ship's mast. Splinters burst everywhere. Khal grabbed Serin and pulled her aside just as debris crashed where she had stood. "Listen to me," he shouted over the roaring storm. "You saved Maruva not because you had power, but because you chose love. Do it again." Serin trembled, water spilling down her face like tears. "What if I fail?" Khal held her gaze with fierce steadiness. "Then we fail together. But if you stay silent, everything ends." Serin swallowed hard, seeing the terror in the soldiers' faces. She looked into Khal's eyes, and saw not fear but trust. Something inside her shifted. She nodded slowly. "Then stand with me." Khal lifted his trident and placed his hand over hers. "Always." Serin stepped forward onto the edge of the broken deck, her hair whipping in the screaming wind. The ocean churned beneath her, glowing faintly as if waiting for her call. She closed her eyes, silencing the noise of fear and chaos around her. She reached into the deepest part of her heart, into every wound, every memory, every moment of love and despair. She whispered softly at first, "I am not afraid." And then she sang. Her voice rose slowly, trembling but growing stronger with each breath. The sound flowed across the water like pure light, weaving through the storm winds. Waves softened at its touch. Ice cracked and melted. Soldiers lifted their heads, all widening their eyes. Kaylee's whispered. Yes, keep going. Seran's song swelled, rich, powerful, unstoppable. The sea glowed bright turquoise, spiraling upward around her like wings made of water. Morgrath roared in fury, striking at the waves. Silence! Your voice cannot break fate. But Serin only sang louder, pouring her entire soul into the melody. Her suffering, her forgiveness, her hope, her love. The ocean around her exploded with radiant light, forming a giant column rising toward the sky. Morgrath stumbled backward, shrieking as water seared his shadowed flesh like fire. No, this cannot be, he screamed. Seran's song struck him like a tidal wave, lifting him off the ice and hurling him backward. His massive body crashed into the frozen cliffs, cracking them apart. The storm trembled. The sky shook. Light burned through darkness. Morgrath writhed, his form flickering wildly between shadow and smoke. Your song cannot bind me, he roared. The chains are broken. Serin gasped for air, her voice strained. Then I will forge new chains. She raised her hands and sang again, but this time her voice trembled, not with fear, but with pain. The effort tore through her body like lightning. Her scales dimmed, and blood trickled from her lips. Kaylee shouted, Serin, stop. You're hurting yourself. Serin shook her head firmly. This is bigger than me. It is for the world. Morgrath surged upward and struck her with a blast of dark energy. Serin screamed, flung violently across the deck. She hit the boards hard, collapsing as the light around her flickered weakly. Kaylee's ran to her, dropping to his knees. Stay with me. Serin, look at me. Her breathing was shallow, her pulse faint. She whispered weakly, If I fall, promise you will finish it. Kaylee's grabbed her hands. No, we finish it together. Behind them, Morgrath laughed triumphantly. Your voice fades. The sea falls to darkness. All hope dies. Kaylee stood, rage blazing in his eyes. Hope does not die while I still breathe. With a shout he charged, striking Morgrath with a blast of pure power. But Morgrath seized him in one massive claw, lifting him off the ground. Kaylee struggled as the monster squeezed, crushing his ribs. Seran's eyes flew open in horror. No! Morgrath lifted Kaylee's high above the deck, his voice dripping with triumph. Watch him die, Songbearer. Watch hope shatter. Kaylee's gasped, the trident slipping from his hand. Serin, sing. Serin tried to stand, but pain shot through her entire body. Her voice cracked as she tried to summon a note. Let him go. Morgrath laughed wickedly. Your song is broken. You are nothing. Seran's head dropped. Flashbacks burst through her mind like shattered glass. The villagers turning on her, the net tearing into her skin, the storm swallowing her voice, her heart breaking. She heard Elda's betrayal, Sira's venomous words, Marvin's sneer. Her hands trembled and tears spilled down her cheeks. Morgrath leaned close, sneering. You see? Love is weakness. And then another memory surfaced. Lena crying, Love is stronger than fear. Kaylee's whispering, Trust again. The village singing lantern songs on the shore. The children cheering when she returned. Her heart throbbed with fierce fire. Serin lifted her head slowly, eyes blazing with light. You are wrong. Morgrath paused, confused. Serin stood, her entire body glowing with radiant turquoise energy. Love is not weakness. Love is the strongest force in the sea. Morgrath snarled, tightening his grip on Kaylee's. Prove it. Serin closed her eyes and inhaled sharply, then released a single, pure note filled with every emotion she had ever felt. The ocean responded with a roar like 1,000 storms igniting at once. The water exploded upward into a giant vortex of luminous silver and blue, swirling so high it touched the sky. Light wrapped around Seran's body, forming a radiant shell like armor made of water. Her scales glowed like diamonds. Her hair lifted in a glowing crown around her. Morgrath staggered backward, shielding his eyes from the blinding light. Serin lifted both hands, voice ringing across the frozen sea like a bell forged from starfire. By the tide that bore me, by the song that binds the sea, I command the ocean to rise. The vortex responded, twisting into a massive spiral surrounding Morgrath. He roared in panic, releasing Khal, who collapsed onto the deck trying to breathe. The water wrapped around Morgrath like chains of lightning, binding him tight. He screamed, dark smoke pouring from his body. No, no! I cannot return to the abyss. Serin's voice cut through his screams. You do not rule the sea. The sea chooses its guardians. The vortex surged upward, lifting Morgrath into the air. He clawed violently, but the water tightened. This is not over. I will rise again. Serin's final note rang like thunder, and the vortex snapped shut, dragging Morgrath screaming into a burning shaft of light that sealed the ice beneath them like molten glass. A shockwave burst outward, knocking everyone to the ground. Then silence. The storm cleared instantly, leaving the sky bright and filled with shimmering aurora lights, stretching across the horizon like ribbons of glowing fire. The ice stopped trembling. The sea stilled, peaceful and quiet. Serin collapsed, the light fading from her body, her strength drained completely. Khal crawled weakly to her side, gathering her gently into his arms. Serin, stay with me, he whispered, voice breaking. Serin's eyes fluttered open, her voice faint. Is it done? Khal nodded, tears spilling down his face. You saved us all. Soldiers slowly rose to their feet, staring in awe. Some fell to their knees in reverence. Long live the song-bearer, they shouted. Guardian of the tides. Serin smiled weakly. I am no queen, only a voice. Khal gently stroked her hair. A voice that changed the world. Serin winced, pain tightening her expression. I do not know if I can move. Khal lifted her carefully. You don't need to. I will carry you. Serin looked up at him, tears filling her eyes. Thank you for believing in me. Khal pressed his forehead gently against hers. I always will. The aurora reflected in his eyes like stars mirrored in water. The ship drifted south, heading home. News of Serin's victory spread across the sea faster than the wind. When the ship finally approached Maruva, hundreds of villagers waited along the shore, lanterns raised high. As the vessel came into view, cheers erupted across the beach. Lena pushed to the front, tears shining like sunlight. Serin! She's back! Khal carried Serin carefully to the edge of the ship, where a tide platform formed beneath them, lowering them gently to the sand. Lena ran to Serin and threw her arms around her, sobbing with joy. You returned. I knew you would. Serin smiled softly, resting her head against Lena's. I promised. Elder approached with trembling steps and knelt before Serin in the sand. Forgive us once more, guardian of the sea. Serin touched his shoulder gently. Forgiveness is not given once. It grows every day. Elder bowed lower, tears falling freely. We will honor you always. Children rushed forward, placing shining seashell crowns on Serin's head. The entire village began to sing, a song of gratitude, hope, and rebirth. Serin wept openly, overcome. That night, a grand celebration filled the village. Fires glowed across the shore, drums thundered with joy, and lanterns floated into the sky like rising stars. Khal stood beside Serin, watching the lights drift upward. You have given them more than safety, he said. You have given them a reason to believe again. Serin turned to him. And you have given me the courage to trust again. Khal looked into her eyes. What will you do now? Serin gazed at the shimmering sea. The ocean is wide. There are many wounds yet to heal. But I will no longer wander alone. Kaylee smiled gently, understanding without words. Lena approached grinning. The sea chose well when it chose you both. Serin laughed softly. Perhaps. Kaylee's reached for Seran's hand. She hesitated for a breath, and then intertwined her fingers with his. The ocean glowed softly behind them, reflecting their joined hands like prophecy made real. As the moon climbed high, Aurelia appeared upon the waves, glowing like moonlight on water. The villagers gasped in awe. Serin stepped forward, smiling warmly. Aurelia. Aurelia nodded. You have fulfilled the prophecy of the song-bearer. The sea is safe for now. Serin frowned slightly. For now. Aurelia's voice softened but carried weight. Darkness always waits for weakened hearts. But hope lives as long as those who carry it refuse to surrender. She looked at Serin and Kaylee's. Your journey is not over. It has only begun. Serin nodded calmly. I am ready. Aurelia smiled. Then the sea walks with you always. She dissolved into a burst of glittering light, drifting into the waves like stardust. The ocean shimmered beneath the rising dawn. The water glowed golden blue, peaceful and alive. Serin swam slowly into the shallows, letting the tide wrap around her. Kaylee stepped beside her, touching the water with his hand. Lena and the villagers stood behind them, torches burning brightly. Serin lifted her face to the new sun. A new tide begins, she whispered softly. Kaylee's nodded. Together. Serin smiled, her heart finally healed. She dove gracefully beneath the waves, her shimmering tail cutting through the water like a streak of silver light. Kaylee's followed into the tide, and the villagers watched with hope rather than fear. Lanterns floated upon the sea, drifting toward the horizon like promises carried by the current. And from somewhere deep beneath the waves, a song rose, soft, powerful, filled with life. A song that would echo across all oceans. A song of love. A song of courage. A song that would never again be silenced. Please like, subscribe, share, and comment next. To African Tales by Khal.